I need to ground myself before I speak to this because where I stood before um, the vote, the voice to Parliament, was very different to where I stand now. So, for context, the 26th of January, first before it became Australia Day, was the day that Aboriginal people began to lose everything. It was the day that colonialism and genocide and the White Australia policy, that was the day that that ripple effect and that seed was planted for what we now call Australia to become it, and for First Nations people to fight for their right to live and exist. We lost our children, we lost our way of life, we lost our voice, they took our children, they took our land, they took our culture. And they told us we were not allowed to be ourselves in the world, to the point where our very existence as Aboriginal people was a threat to white colonialism and patriarchal systems and narrative.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Welcome to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started.
From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented.
A trigger warning for you, dear listener. In this episode, we are talking about sexual abuse, domestic violence, and suicide. Hey, if you are not already caught up on part 1 of this conversation with Shantelle Thompson, you need to hit pause, go back to last week's convo, listen to part 1, and then come back and listen to this part 2. Here we go. You shared a quote very recently by Inky Johnson. Champions are made on the other side of I don't feel like it. And that it stopped me in my tracks. And it just really hit me in that moment because it really spoke to me and served as a motivator to get certain things done that I had been holding back on. And I think that's a quote I'm going to write down and just pop somewhere up there because it just kind of just hit me where I was in that time.
Yep.
What is it about that quote and what made you share it?
So, firstly, thank you, because the level of research that you've done shows a level of respect and integrity for me and my journey, but also a level of integrity and responsibility to your audience, and to create platforms that are intentional about shifting narratives and experiences around racial equity and justice. And it, like I said, I think we, as women and as an Indigenous woman, there are multiple layers to my responsibility. There's me as the individual, then there's my inner circle and who I'm responsible of. And I mean, I don't remember who that quote is, but the saying that you are made up of the 5 people, that your wealth and your impact and your reach is determined by the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Absolutely.
But also you flip that. The people that you spend the most time with are also influenced outwards by who you are, but not just inwards. So for me, it's I spend 90% of my time with my kids and with the young people that I work with. So for me to put a message out into the world, I literally see it as planting a seed and creating a ripple effect. I don't try to determine who that's going to hit. I trust that if it's connected with me, it may resonate with someone else. So when it hit me, it literally knocked me out for six. Like when I read that, I was like, holy, it was like the ancestors were getting sick of me dancing around. They were getting tired of me not listening, my dreaming, and I'm really at a crossroads with my life where my life, my kids, my ancestors, and my dreaming. So for those that don't know, dreaming is your purpose or your calling. And there's a difference between having a purpose and a calling. Your calling is something that you were chosen to do. I didn't choose to do the kid, I didn't choose to start my foundation for women and youth. I was called to do that. My ancestors said, you have a responsibility to be a part of this solution. This is your work.
Yeah.
And then my purpose is more, who am I and how do I move through the world and allow my being to be of service to others? And that's the Barkindji warrior. That's the warrior heart. That's my purpose. But my calling is this shifting of narratives and creating brave, culturally grounded, ancestrally guided, dreaming led spaces for not just Aboriginal women and youth in my community, but this will start to expand and open up into the work that I do. But when I heard Inky say that, it really resonated because everything I need is on the other side of I feel like I don't like that. And there will be
Yeah.
people who do not resonate with the word champion or warrior, but I implore you to sit with the responsibility of redefining what that word means for you in your context. Champion isn't just winning world titles and everything else. It's what would it take to be a champion in your own world? Where are you holding yourself back and where are you hiding? And where is the greatest potential for you to leverage your own power and responsibility? But where is something that you've been hiding from that I don't feel like it? So, Yolanda Finette, in being a woman, we always talk about self-care and, your feelings matter, right? But which feelings? Your truth or your trauma and your ego? So, this is where I come from the heart, right? The heart doesn't lie. The heart bypasses ego and it bypasses trauma. Now, neither trauma or ego are bad if they activate us to want to do better.
Mhm.
This is the thing, like there's everything's so black and white, and people run or hide or they go too deep. Like I said, people either a doctor, I've seen people identify with the diagnosis. They start to tap out to the diagnosis. Oh, I can't do that because I'm neurodivergent. I can't do that because I have depression. It's not like I'm depressed rather than I have depression. There's a very difference with the way we identify with things, but the way we tap out to things. Now, but also, how can that be a superpower? How can I use this knowledge to work with myself rather than against myself? So when Inky said that, I was like, and Yolanda brought up to me, often we see self-care as bubble baths and facials and lashes and all this sort of other stuff, right? But Yolanda said deep self-care is taking the responsibility to show up, to do the things that we have been avoiding that take us away from a life that is already well lived. And she redefined the whole concept of self-care as taking responsibility to take care of the things we have been avoiding that are hurting us or that are getting in the way of our well-being, our power, and our potential. So when Inky said this to me, it spoke to me recently, like this is in the last few weeks. What have I been hiding from? What am I avoiding? What's hurting me? But what am I hiding from and what am I scared of? And if I manage my feelings and I get on with getting this stuff done, but also I want to preface that your nervous system will only allow you to operate at what it is used to. So even if you're seeking peace and aspire to peace, but your nervous system is used to chaos and trauma, it will choose chaos and trauma over peace any day. So even if you're at a spiritual and a mental level of wanting peace and everything, you can be as motivated and as committed as ever. But if you're not doing the body work and the nervous system level work, you will revert back to what your nervous system level knows. So it's this very deep sort of work. But when Inky spoke that to me, I was like, there are so many things that I can do now that if I just have them, the good, done enough version. What is the done good enough version of this thing, of a website? So I want to be a speaker. I don't have a speaking website. I don't have a capability statement. I'm not registered with a speaking bureau. How do I get that done in a way that just is good enough to start the momentum? So when I'm not showing up and where am I not taking responsibility? And what is the difference between the feeling as an excuse versus the feeling as a trauma response and a trigger? And how do I manage that to be able to show up?
Mm. Ooh, honestly, it's just, and I know the person listening, hearing that quote, it's gonna hit them in a way that they're like, oh, I needed to hear this. That is such a needed
I just want to
affirmation.
preface, yeah, I just want to preface for people this, and I'm gentling, my warrior heart is coming through, my warrior thing is coming through with grace, and it's not about rocking up with the chest pounding and the belt around my shoulders and all that. That has its place too. Do not get me wrong. I just want to share very quickly where this resonates is showing up to do the work and not hiding from your own power and potential, but doing it from what is the best that I can do now with responsibility. So in the past, I worked for a year at a young in Malmesbury Prison, which is a youth prison. And I worked with Aboriginal young men, and three of them were my nephews. So you cannot, very few people will understand the complexity, the pain, the responsibility, the risk associated with going into a prison system
Mm.
with young men who are there for a reason, but also are victims of a system that incarcerates our children over creating restorative justice avenues. And I sat with these young men knowing the steps, like you are being punished because you became a victim of your own circumstances. That was your beginning was not your fault. And at the same time, so I went in there as this, I wanted to rescue these kids. I wanted to empower them. I saw their power and potential. I knew why they'd gotten there, but I saw their power and their potential. But I also had to face the very real thing that I was in a jail with young men. I was in a 3 by 3 room with kids, young men at any point that could tap into their trauma, or they could choose to hurt me to get out. Anyway, they I sat with that and we were having a yarn and I was introducing myself and I made a very conscious choice to make a decision because I was like, I'm not a worker. I'm not bound by the same risk that the workers are here. My job isn't bound by what I say right now. And I said to the boys, I said, look, I'm your older cousin, I'm your auntie, and the other young men, this is who I am. I'm the Barkindji warrior, jiu-jitsu, all this and that. And I could see some of the boys in the background kind of going, we think we can take her. They saw it as a threat. Like, oh, she thinks she's all this. Like, let's prove it, right? So I chose to make a statement and I said, if you want to understand this, I'm a world champion. I'm known as the Barkindji warrior, and was gifted these titles because of the fights that I've been through. I didn't call myself the Barkindji warrior. That was a responsibility and a title given to me because my ancestors said, this is who you need to be to do your work. And it's also who my life shaped me to become, to answer your other question. Are we born fighters? I was born a fighter because my ancestors said, you need to be our warrior for this.
Mhm.
But also my life shaped it for me because I had to fight to be myself in the world. So I sat with these young men and I said, I understand this. I'm not the type of woman that did jiu-jitsu because I needed to learn self-protection. I did jujitsu. I enjoy fighting. I already knew how to fight. Jujitsu and culture taught me how to channel that into something for healing and responsibility to be of service to others. So I don't fight because I choose to. I have those skills because when I am called to fight, I can. I have the voice, I have the skills, I have the tools. But with you young men in this context, understand this. You want to see aggression, come and watch me compete. You want to see violence threaten my children. Understand this. If you try to carjack me and my kids are in the car, you try to break into my home, you're not getting therapeutic treatment. Your ass will find yourself on the ground because I will do what I need to do to protect me and mine. But I will be in the car following you to the hospital so that I can give you some auntie love on the other side of that incident because I am not responsible for your trauma. I'm not going to be a victim to your trauma. You have tapped out to your responsibility to be a part of your own solution. So I don't walk around with my world titles and my degrees cloaked over me, but they are in me and I will show them when I need to. If I'm challenged by white colonial patriarchal systems where people go, oh, you don't belong here. It's like, oh, I'm here. I am here to break the door down so that those that need to be in this room, of course I don't belong in this room. Of course I'm an imposter here because these rooms were not designed or created. They were to see me in them, but I have a responsibility to be here because my ancestor, and this is where Harambe come into it, my ancestors gifted me the strength, the resources, and the courage to be the voice for others that cannot be here, but also for those yet to come, so that when they come to these rooms, this room is better for them to take it further. So being this responsibility isn't about pounding on your chest. It's about sitting with yourself going, where do I have the responsibility to do something different? Where do I have the power and the skills to heal myself, to show up for myself in a way that will ripple out into those that I love? Like, how am I hurting those that I love and the world by not showing up, by hiding from behind my pain? So yes, I am the Barkindji warrior. Yes, I'm a world champion. And if you challenge me on that, I will lay my credentials all over this to go, I am not, I am about this. I've been about this my whole life. I am not new to this, but I don't need to parade it. And it's not about, it's about where lovingly, where can I hold myself accountable to my own responsibility to show up and do the work so that when I am grounded, Wapanya is an Aboriginal word, is a Barkindji word for to continuously give. As women of color and as women, we are constantly taught that in order to be of service to others, we need to abandon ourselves, the burnout, the to give to myself, to position myself is to be selfish as an individual. But when you look at country, in order for a seed to become a tree that becomes an ancestral tree, that becomes a birthing tree, that becomes the tree where the eagle and the crow, our creator spirits, build the nest for the next generation, the seed has to first break open. It has to be courageous enough to break open and stop being a seed to become a seedling. But it has to take what it needs from country before it can be of service to others. So in order for me to be what I am for my community, I had to give myself permission to be for myself. I had to know who I was so that when I show up to be of service to others, I'm serving from my truth, my power, and my heart. That's where all this comes from. That's where it all sits.
Ooh, becoming a seedling, that statement right there, that's just that's hit me. That has hit me. Shantelle, you have a book coming up, Warrior Heart, Suicide to World Champion. Who is this book for? And what can readers expect to take away from your story?
Champions made on the other side of I don't feel like it. This book has been in my calling and been in my energy field for 10 years. So I have been a world champion for 10 years this year. Oh my God, I didn't even realize that. Oh my God, it's 10 years. It is a decade since I won my first world title. And I want to preface, when I got the calling, I didn't choose it. I got the calling, you need to be a world champion. I didn't even believe it was possible. The world around me, I looked around outside of me and I was like, how is someone like me going to become a world champion? There's no blueprint, there's no map, there's no resources. In my world, there were no Indigenous mature age mothers. I was 27. I wasn't some 15-year-old that got talent ID'd and pulled into a talent program and said, you could be a world champion. I was managing a full-time job. I was studying. I was trying to do all the things to justify the fact that I was allowed to have my dreaming and I could be a world champion while still showing up to be a good mum, bring in money to take care of my family and meet my cultural obligations. Because that's the other thing. As an Indigenous woman, I'm not just allowed to go out in the world and say, oh, I'm going to be a world champion and just go off and do what I want. I have responsibilities and obligations. But then I realized I could meet those responsibilities and obligations by meeting my own desires and aspirations and well-being. I didn't have to sacrifice myself or abandon myself in order to meet those obligations. The Warrior Heart, Suicide to World Champion, is the life lessons that I have learned, the steps that I have taken. So it is a combination of a self-help book, a biography and a memoir, but it's also a shifting of narrative. So each chapter is dedicated to a lesson that I have learned about going from suicide to world champion, about what it took for me to become and be the Barkindji warrior. And each chapter will have a lesson. It will have a how I did it, why it's important, but it will also have my story. It will have resources. And what I'm really excited about is each chapter will have an Aboriginal art piece that tells the story in art and language, because my gift is not in traditional art. My gift is in my story and in my voice. This this book, this story, this movement is for those that have had to reclaim and fight to be themselves in the world. This is for those that have had to become the warriors within themselves before they could become, but then they're using their experiences to fight for something worth fighting for. Even in the world, they know what they're willing to die for. And I know that sounds really extreme, but I literally, December 2023, did not think that I was worthy of being alive. I allowed my shame and my grief and others' narratives about me and forgetting my responsibility to get in the way of what I could do and what was available to me, that this was the path where the warrior heart was really born into it, that I had to fight for myself. I had to reclaim it. I had to become the warrior but I had to be led by my heart to be able to manage the ego and the trauma and the journey through the darkness. So this is for anyone that has had to fight. This is for anyone that has had to reclaim, or the world tried to take it from you or your ancestors. And you are the one. You are the one that your songline, your ancestors said, it is up to you to remember who we are. Like the Lion King. So Mufasa says to Simba, remember who you are. She had to go on a journey. She had to go against everything that her father and her ancestors had done to keep them safe was now the thing that was killing her people. They had forgotten that they were wayfinders. She had to go on and not only reclaim the wayfinding way, but she had to be courageous enough to evolve it to meet the modern day context. Kung Fu Panda, I mean, he didn't think he was going to be the Kung Fu Panda. He was just there, but he was chosen and he evolved. And I've got goosebumps. I know that if anyone's a parent, they understand it. But for me, Moana, Kung Fu Panda, Harriet Tubman, um, um, these are the stories that are my blueprint, that guide me through and that give me answers. But this is more than a book. It is for those that have had to fight to be themselves in the world. It is those that are fighting to be themselves in the world. And it is going to be a resource. It is going to be a movement. It is planting a seed for future generations to benefit from what I have been through. But it is my responsibility to get it out into the world, because this is going to be the foundations for my next level. And I have a community on school as well, the Warrior Heart community attached to this, because I wanted to I wanted to build it out loud. I wanted to build in public. So I'm writing this story out loud. I'm going to use AI. I'm self-publishing because this thing just needs to be out in the world. So it will be out in the world. My launch date is July 1st, in time for NAIDOC. So NAIDOC this year is the Next Generation Strength, Vision and Legacy. And Reconciliation Week theme is building bridges and better now. So it's about weaving the past, the present, and the future together around who are we now, because with where race relations are at, where treaty conversations, truth telling in Australia is at, violence against women, this is the time now. We need warriors now more than ever. Oh, good morning, my love. Thank you. And it's yes, you can, my honey. This is for anyone that wants to hear that story, but it's time for this story to be out in the world. You can watch Netflix on my phone. Is that okay? Good morning, sweetheart. Do you want to say good morning to Annie?
Morning, Annie.
Morning, sweetie.
You want to say good morning to the world?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, can you go sit on the couch and I'll finish my yarn and then I'll be right with you, okay, honey? See, and this is the weaving. This is the life weaving. This is what I do. I'm capable of getting up at 3:30 a.m. to attend 2 calls prior to this, to now have this yarn with you, because mothers are going to hear this, generations are going to hear this, but I get to do this grounded in my culture and my identity. It's messy. I'm figuring things out. I'm emerging from a season of being really unwell with mental health and losing my path. And I'm also a mum, and I gave my phone to my little one first thing in the morning so I could do this work here. So this is what it's all about. It's being brave enough to dream weave your life together and your roles together in a way that honors who you are and your truth, and being brave enough and bold enough to be yourself without apology, but knowing that there's going to be a fight ahead. And when we are grounded in our truth and in our heart, we find a way through. But it's about bringing people together and creating a community of people who are already doing this, and also people who aspire or feel called to do this.
Mm. You know what? We're going to get to the end of this podcast. We're almost at the very end. In less than a couple of weeks, it will be January 26th. What are your thoughts as a First Nations woman on Australia Day being celebrated on January 26th? It's a day, for those who may not know, the people who are listening to this conversation from outside of Australia, it's a day of great pain, loss, survival for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, our First Nations people. What do you have to say about that, that in 2025, we're still here, we're still having this conversation?
I need to ground myself before I speak to this, because where I stood before the vote, the voice to Parliament, was very different to where I stand now. So, for context, the 26th of January, first, before it became Australia Day, was the day that Aboriginal people began to lose everything. It was the day that colonialism and genocide and the White Australia policy, that was the day that that ripple effect and that seed was planted for what we now call Australia to become it, and for First Nations people to fight for their right to live and exist. We lost our children, we lost our way of life, we lost our voice, they took our children, they took our land, they took our culture. And they told us we were not allowed to be ourselves in the world, to the point where our very existence as Aboriginal people was a threat to white colonialism and patriarchal systems and narrative. So in 1938, this is for people who don't know their history. Go and do your research. Take the responsibility to be a part of the solution, not the problem. Educate yourself before sitting there with a self-appointed opinion. The 26th of January, there's two different conversations here. When do we have the day to celebrate being proud to be Australian? But also, what is there proud to be about being Australian right now if you really take responsibility to be honest about what's happening in this country, how we treat our Indigenous people, how we treat poverty, how we treat violence against women. These are systemic issues. These are not individual responsibilities, yet individuals are being tasked. People's lives are being lost because the government and the rhetoric do not want to take responsibility for how this country was founded and how we are managed. So, but then there's also, what is there to be proud of, but also any other date could be chosen for all of us to come together to celebrate what we are proud of being on this country and in this country. So the 1938 Aboriginal people got together in Victoria and declared the 26th of January a national day of mourning because of the genocide, the removal and colonialism. I think it was 1980. I think it might have been Paul Keating or one of the prime ministers. So up until 1980 or something like that, what is now known as Australia Day, which is meant to be a national day of pride, was celebrated on multiple different dates. It was one prime minister, one cabinet that decided, hey, the 26th of January is the best day to celebrate our National Day of Pride. Now, don't you think there's something there, something worth looking into as to why would they choose the day that Aboriginal people choose as their day of mourning to celebrate the National Day of Pride? What does that do to Aboriginal people and our movement? It creates contention. It creates conflict. So people that are attached to the date, it is not the day, it is the meaning. The date could be shifted. And it is the conversation around why is this so difficult? Because it keeps us distracted. I'm not saying that the conversation isn't important, but when our focus is on that, we forget, okay, why are we having this conversation? So again, there's two parts of it. It's like, what can I do to contribute to the conversation? But also, what am I going to do on that day to be meaningful for me and true to what I can do, but also what's within my power? So the 26th of January is not a date to celebrate. It always was and always will be First Nations land. Australia has a Black history. And for me, that is a day of mourning. So I will take the day in the morning to honor my culture and my ancestors that were lost to the reality of how Australia was founded Australia. And in the afternoon, I will spend that time with my foundation, the Kiilalaana Foundation, and our youth and my kids on country to say, where is our strength? Where is our resilience? And what are we going to do to show up to continue to live as proud First Nations people in a country that does not respect or value what we bring to the table and the rhetoric around race relations and Indigenous identity? I feel so you only have to look at the ripple effect of the voice to Parliament. And there were two things being asked of that vote. Should Aboriginal people be enshrined as the first people of Australia? And should we have a voice to Parliament? Those two things should have been separated. We were set up to fail from the start. But since that conversation, you've got Peter Dutton saying, oh, it's divisive, this and that. But now that he was successful with the no vote, he wants to do royal commissions into Aboriginal sexual abuse again. He wants to do royal commissions into all of these things. Queensland backed off from doing truth-telling commission. Like all the things that had progress before, it's almost like we've taken ourselves back to past 1969. It's almost like we've undone or weakened every reconciliation movement, every progress that we've made. And I'm really scared for 2025 for Aboriginal people and our community and our allies and what it means to be an Aboriginal person in this country if Peter Dutton gets into Parliament. And at the same time, what is within my power and my responsibility, past my feelings, to be a champion for the fight that I know is ahead to create safe and brave spaces for my community to come together to do cultural reclamation and to be grounded in culture and to connect with culture and to write our own narratives around what does it mean to be an Indigenous person in the 21st century? Where can I practice my pride and culture in being an Aboriginal person? And first and foremost, regardless of where I am and what I'm doing, I am a culturally grounded, ancestrally guided, dreaming-led First Nations woman. I am Bark and Jing first and foremost before anything else. That is how I am showing up to the conversation. I know that there is a fight ahead. It is not the date to celebrate for me. It is a day of mourning. But it is also a day of remembering and of honoring the strength of those who came before, those who have fought for these conversations. But I'm not going to use my energy and my focus to fight that conversation. I'm going offline on the day and I'm going to choose to focus on my community and my children. And then I will pick up that and go, what is my work going to be in 2025 and how am I going to use my individual contribution towards the collective purpose of women's empowerment, First Nations narrative shifting for the women and for the Indigenous community, but also for the external world's relationship with us.
So Shantelle, what can we do as Australians who want to make a difference and stand in solidarity with First Nations people when it comes to the conversation about January 26th, that, and actually on an ongoing basis, but what can we do that can help move the needle?
Be a part of the solution. Educate yourself. Come and sit on country with us. And then look, don't try to solve the problem for us because this is a big problem that is 230 years old. You showing up to do your part in your part of the world, where do you have influence? At your kitchen table, at your workplace. Where can you invest? Like what resources do you have? Where can you invest your time, your money, your voice, your influence to be a part of the solution? Like what can you put your name and your brand behind? Is there an Indigenous initiative that you can invest in? What do you want to learn? Like come and learn with us, come and sit with us and see how being a part of our community can empower you in your community, but also the work that you are. Don't just try to do it for us because you're in Australia and it's the right thing to do. Do it because I would prefer you to do nothing if you're going to be doing it because it's a tokenistic gesture. Or you're like, oh, I'm doing it because it's like I need to be seen to be doing this. Do it because it connects with you and it resonates with you. I will call bullshit on those that are doing it just because they think. But I also know that if you're going to stand with us and take a stand with us, be prepared for the fallback on yourself. Where are you going to? Who is your support system? Who is educating you on this? What are you listening to? Who are you talking to? Because if you're going to align yourself with our cause and be a part of our community, there are ripple effects into your world, and there are going to be consequences and sacrifices that are going to be made because of this. But use this day as a springboard for the rest of the year. Go and look at Reconciliation Week theme. Go and look at the NAIDOC Week theme and use them as calls to actions and go, well, how can I show up? And it doesn't have to be every day, every week. Okay, this is important to me. I want to be a part of this. Okay, what am I listening to? Where am I speaking to it? And where am I contributing in a way that honors me and the season and the capacity that I have? Because remember, you contributing your bit will weave into a collective effort of change for us to create Australia now that shifts the tide for all of us.
Mm. Underneath it all, the awards, the activism, entrepreneurship, the foundation you've built, what do you feel has been the driving force?
My own what if. I want to know at the end of the day when I leave this world and I take my last breath and I go back to the dreaming, that I can answer my own what if of, did I live my life to my fullest potential? Did I answer my own calling, but did I honor my responsibility to my ancestors to leave this place a better time and place for those that are going to inherit my legacy and my experiences? So for me as a woman, Shantelle Thompson, I want to know that I've lived into my aspirations and my power and potential, not for my children, not for my culture, not for my community, for myself, so that I can know that I've lived a life well lived in alignment with my truth, my power, and my potential, and knowing that my children and those that I serve will be beneficiaries of me showing up, serving from a place of truth and sustainability and overwhelm. And at the same time, I want to know that who I have been has shifted narratives. It has awakened in people the power and the potential and the possibility and the courage to dream, but not just to dream, but to show up, to do the work, to become the person who can not only achieve the dream, but carry the dream and be and then hold the dream. Because that's the other thing. Like, I got to be a world champion, but did I hold that space? Did I make that space count for what's to come? So it is to awaken the warrior heart in just the next person who hears this, so that they go, if she can, I can. And then by that person showing up to be who they need to be in their world, they create a ripple effect, or they plant a seed for others to be a beneficiary, but they give themselves permission to do that from alignment of their own heart, and they're willing to fight for their truth in the world.
Powerful. My final question, and this is a question, Shantelle, that I ask everybody, and I just don't know how you're going to answer this. But the question is, if fear wasn't a factor, how would you show up in your work?
Fear is a factor, and I'm showing up anyway, because I think I don't ascribe to this be fearless, because it is not real. Annie, the world is hard right now. I've had to fight to be myself. The fear is still there, but I know that the cost of the fear. What is the fear costing me? And what would it look like if I held fear's hand and I walked with my fear and trusted that my fear was there to keep me safe, in a way that my fear is a tool. My fear is a guide to what am I scared of? And there's a difference. There are fears that keep us safe,
Yeah.
and there are fears that hold us back. And sometimes the fears that hold us back are the fears that once held us safe. So I think it's this courage to constantly sit with ourselves, to go, does this fear serve me, or does it hold me back? Because I think we misconstrue, we need to redefine what fear is as a tool.
Yeah.
But also as a reality. As a woman that grew up as a First Nations woman, with the experiences that I've had, fear is a reality. I have a lot of trauma and a lot of healing, and there's only so much I can do in my lifetime. I fear harming my children because of who I am, but I've already done that. No one can break my heart as much as what I've already been through. So now I know that as I heal through this, I had the courage to walk away from situations and dreams and evolve myself to go, I can no longer live in half truth. I can no longer be afraid of my own power. So I'm holding fear's hand and I'm thanking her for being there because she kept me safe for so long. But the fears that kept me safe are now the fears that are hurting me and holding me back. So I'm taking my responsibility and my courage to go, what does my inner work look like that fear sits in the back seat? And if you're a big family like we are, in the back row of the Kia Carnival, to go, you can come on for the journey. I see you,
Yeah.
but you don't lead me anymore. So that's what I would say is to build a different relationship and understanding of fear. And how has fear served you and kept you safe in the past? But then how are you using fear as an excuse to not show up to your responsibility, but also your potential?
Mm. Oh my goodness, Shantelle. Wow.
I think I just want to, sorry, I just want to end this. By holding fear's hand, who I will become on the other side of this is who I was always meant to be and who I can be, which is to be brave enough, to be bold enough to be myself without apology. And that means showing up every day to do the best I can with what I've got, to love my children, to be a First Nations woman and lead from that First Nations identity and space, and to be my warrior heart in whatever season that is, and to keep coming back and going, I'm ancestrally guided, I'm culturally grounded, and I'm dreaming led. And my dream right now is I want to be a black belt world champion. I want to build $1 million brand and business so that I have the self-determination and the sovereignty of time freedom, financial freedom, and energy freedom to invest my impact and my resources and my money to the causes that are going to create the greatest change in my lifetime, not tomorrow, but today. And I want to do it while I am well, wealthy, and worthy. I've got peace, I've got space, and I can play, and I've got joy, and it is all possible. And I can only do that. That only becomes possible when I hold fear's hand and I come from my truth and my heart, but I'm also willing to know what I'm going to fight for, who I'm fighting for, and why I'm fighting. And that is what the warrior heart is. And that is who I'm going to become on the other side of holding fear's hand and moving with it.
Mm. Shantelle Thompson, you are a teacher through and through. You are a mentor. You are a warrior heart for sure. Now, where can people find you? Where can people race over, tripping over themselves, trying to find you? Where can they connect with you?
Okay. If you just Google my name, if you are unsure of who the hell you have just met, Google my name. I am on every platform, and how you hear me here is how you will hear me there. I am growing out loud. I am building in public. So if you want to know more, you can hit me up on my main platforms are YouTube and LinkedIn, and my podcast. So just type Shantelle Thompson into Spotify, you will find it. And if you want to know more and you want to work with me in some way, I'm taking speaking opportunities for 2025. My coaching books are open. So if you want to work with me as a mentor or as a coach, I have the Kiilalaana Foundation working with First Nations women and youth for those that are in corporate social responsibility. And I'm also on my book. You can pre-purchase my book on my website, chantellethompson.com, which will be open in the next 30 days. And if you really feel compelled and you are curious, join the Warrior Heart community on the school platform. And within the next 30 days, this will, from the date of this podcast being released, actually, I'll put a date on it. By the 14th of February, my Valentine's Day gift to myself will be that my website will be up and running.
Oh.
And you will be able to find everything there. But you can book me for speaking, you can book me for coaching, or you can join me in the Warrior Heart community and movement.
And we will have all those links in the show notes that you're able to go there, click, and connect with Shantelle. Thank you so much for your time. You have contributed so generously. You've been up since 3:30 a.m. getting things done and then having this conversation with me. I am so grateful and I wish you the absolute best. And please come back again on the podcast.
I would love to come back. Let's commit to me coming back once I've launched my book into the world and it's been out in the world a little bit to see how it's shifting experiences and conversations. Thank you so much, Annie, and thank you to the listeners for your time, your heart, and your energy. But please make the effort to do something with what you've learned today. take one thing, plant a seed in the ground from what you've learned, but also do something, create a ripple effect from one thing that has resonated with you today.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.
Represented from coast to coast.